Hello and welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to cover the other artifact archetype that's available in the system, which is the Ursine Avenger hood. In case you missed my previous video, an artifact archetype is a piece of equipment, in this case a helm crafted from the head of a bear, which grants its wearer some small benefits and access to a unique archetype specific to that artifact. This artifact archetype is meant to be used with the free archetype variant rule, so if you're a GM considering handing out one of these to your players, you should keep that in mind. The Ursine Avenger hood, once invested, will grant you a +1 to your nature checks to command animals, which becomes a +2 if you're trying to command a bear. And you also take -1 to gather information or make impressions if you spend too long in civilization without retreating to the wilderness to recuperate. Now, in all honesty, these are pretty minor benefits. None of these are likely to come up even in campaigns where that's sort of built around them. However, the benefit of the artifact archetype is obviously going to be more focused in the archetype than it is in the artifact. Because this is meant to be used with a free archetype variant rule, there is precisely one feat at every level which you can take archetype feats available in the Ursine Avenger archetype. Starting of course with the dedication, which grants Ursine Avenger form. For an action, you can morph partially into a bear, which grants you a 1d8 piercing jaws attack and a d6 slashing agile claws attack. While you can't speak while in this form, you can only make grunts and gestures. This is still a really powerful base ability. 1d8 rivals even the best one-handed melee weapons in terms of raw damage die, and the fact that it's a jaws attack leaves both your hands open, so even if you do want to use the slashing attack for its agile trait, you have one hand free to hold a shield, a potion, a wand, or even just to grapple and trip your enemies, meaning this has a lot of flexibility alongside a pretty decent amount of power for a dedication feat. At level 4 you get Sense of the Bear, which grants you low light vision and an imprecise scent, or if you already had low light vision, upgrades you to dark vision. And at level 6 you have Bear Hug, which if you've already clawed someone once, you can try and claw them again, and if you're successful, the target is automatically grabbed. Call Ursine Ally at level 8 grants you a once-a-day summon animal spell, which is restricted to black bears. It does scale a little bit with you, but you only have the one option, although they are pretty decent options. Bear Empathy at level 10 allows you to communicate also with bears. And then at level 12, Great Bear allows you, when you assume your Ursine Avenger form, to spend an additional action to also gain the Enlarge spell, becoming an large bear as with all the benefits that that brings. At level 14, you get Terrible Transformation, which allows you for free to demoralize everyone within 30 feet when you assume your Ursine form. And at level 16 you get Fearsome Fangs, which upgrades your jaws damage from a d8 to a d12, and your claws from a d6 to a d8. While this comes quite late in your character's career, this is actually an enormous upgrade. There are no one-handed d12 weapons, much less d12 weapons that require no hands to wield because they come in the form of your jaws. And there are no d8 agile weapons, which is what is granted to you by your claws attack. Now obviously you don't get any other traits, you don't get a trip grapple trait, or forceful or max swing, or any of the other useful traits of the system. But from a pure raw damage perspective, Fearsome Fangs out of the Ursine Avenger archetype is quite easily the largest damage with the least hand economy requirements in the entire game. At level 18 we have Mighty Bear, which upgrades our enlarged spell to 4th level, which makes it huge. And finally, our capstone level 20, Immortal Bear, grants us Fast Healing 5. Note this is not regeneration, so you can still be killed by getting a dying value of 4, but this is still quite a bit of healing. And in addition, because Ursine Avenger form does not have limited uses per day or anything like that, you can just spend a minute or two out of combat, and even if you are at 1 HP, Fast Healing 5 will heal pretty much any character to full within a couple of minutes, saving your party a whole ton of resources on healing you up between encounters. So overall, I think the Ursine Avenger archetype is extremely strong. It gives you hands down the best unarmed attacks in the game, which compete even for some of the best weapon attacks available in PF2. Additionally, its extra feats, things like Sense of the Bear or Call Ursine Ally, are very useful and widely applicable. Having a 30-foot imprecise scent straight away from level 4 to the end of the campaign comes up very often. Even if you're just fighting an invisible enemy, knowing precisely which square that enemy is in, as long as they're within 30 feet of you, is a very good ability and allows you to much more easily deal with invisible foes that are trying to attack you. So if I were to use the Ursine Avenger hood in a character that I was building, how would I do it? Well, I think pretty obviously this by itself gives you quite a bit of combat capability in terms of raw damage output, but it is restricted to auto attacks. So we want a class that can take advantage of that as much as possible. And the first and most obvious choice that comes to mind is going to be the monk, the master of unarmed attacking. The thing with the Ursine Avenger hood is it's so just generically good that even if we narrow it down to a single class, there's a lot of different ways we can take it. Focusing on crowd control and grappling, focusing on just even more raw damage output, supporting our allies with things like potions, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to get too deep into that, but I will quickly cover something that I think is an important consideration in this, which is going to be our stance selection. As we can see from this table, there's quite a few different stances that the monk has access to, and each comes with their benefits and downsides. The first consideration for our character is that quite a few of these stances specify that we can only make one type of unarmed attack. For example, the Cobra stance specifies that the only strikes we can make are Cobra Fang unarmed attacks. And obviously we want to be using our Ursine Avenger unarmed attacks, so any stance that says something like this is going to be straight off not an option for us. The second thing to keep in mind is we, once again, already have a very strong unarmed attack from our archetype, meaning stances whose main draws are their powerful unarmed attacks are going to be significantly less appealing. For example, the Dragon stance gives a 1d10 bludgeoning damage attack, which is usually the best attack that the monks can get. However, while our Ursine Avenger doesn't start that high, eventually we will upgrade to a d12, which at that point will eclipse the Dragon stance in damage. Thus, when choosing our stance, we want to find one that not only allows us to make any type of unarmed attack that we want, but also has benefits outside of just a powerful unarmed attack. So with that in mind, I have picked out 3 stances that I think are especially appealing for the Ursine Avenger archetype. The first one will be the Stoked Flame stance. It grants us a D8 slashing damage attack with a couple of nice traits, but nothing that I think outweighs our Ursine Avenger attack. It does give us an additional +5 for status bonus to our speed, on top of the bonus we already get from being a monk. But most importantly, in my opinion, is that it grants us access to the Inner Fire feat at level 6, which stipulates that any creature that touches us takes fire damage equal to our Wisdom modifier. If we want to lean into kind of a controller build, and especially with that barrel hug feat, which let us grab our enemies for free so long as we succeeded on a strike, this could be an extremely easy way to get free extra 4 to 5 fire damage every single turn on the enemy. The next stance which appeals to me is the Reflective Ripple stance. This grants us a D6 attack, but this attack I think is actually appealing to use in some cases because it has the disarm and trip traits, meaning that we are allowed to apply our bonuses from any hand wraps of mighty blows that we have to athletics checks to disarm and trip. And on top of that we get another +1 circumstance to disarm, swim, and trip. And the final stance which appeals to me is the Ironblood stance. Now this one isn't available to level 8, and it doesn't provide an unarmed attack which is significantly better than the one we already have in my opinion. However, what it does give is resistance 2 to all damage, which eventually scales to resistance 5 at 20th level. If you want to make an extremely tanky Ursine Avenger, especially at high levels once you get the Immortal Bear feat, resistance 5 to all damage and fast healing 5 can make you incredibly difficult to kill. Now of these 3, the one that I think I would be most likely to take is Reflective Ripple, because the +1 bonus to trip is very nice, but I think more importantly is the trip trait on our Flowing Wave attack. What this means is that we can rely purely on hand wraps of mighty blows, which will boost our unarmed attacks, obviously, but also our trip attempts and our disarm attempts. And through Bear Hug, we can grab on a strike, meaning they indirectly boost our grab attempts as well. What this gives us is a very strong controlling monk that is able to rely on one piece of gear for all the bonuses they need offensively, and on top of that gets an extremely powerful unarmed attack through its archetype that it doesn't need to invest any actual class feats for. So that's all for this week's video. As you can probably tell, I'm a really big fan of this Ursine Avenger archetype. Not only is it just really cool to be able to morph into a bear and claw your enemies to death, it's also, I think, an extremely effective archetype that even if you aren't taking full use of it, just picking it up as like a normal mortal to get a D8 and eventually a D12 unarmed attack is possibly worth it just all on its own. Not to mention all of the other benefits you gain from investing in this archetype. So thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please come back next time to see what I cover from the Pathfinder 2e system next. But until then, I hope you have a lovely day.